Hey everybody, welcome back to Inside Nebraska's Rapid Recap. He is Greg Smith.
Hi.
And if you don't remember me, I'm Zack, Carpenter, a publisher of Inside Nebraska. Greg, I mean, usually I like to just jump into it here, but it's been a long time since I've been on camera. Like, how am I doing so far in the first 5 seconds?
In the first 5 seconds, I would give you a passing grade.
All right. So I get like an A. Would I get a single digit jersey number if I was on the Huskers?
No, not yet.
So
Ask me at the end of the video.
All right. We're both wearing gray here, Greg and I, on a gray overcast day for the start of Huskers fall camp. It was the first practice. Media got about 20 to 25 minutes or so to take in the first part of practice. We'll get to that in a second, but Greg, Matt Rhule ran through a bunch of different updates, roster updates, statement on Bob Wager. What was it? Miles Farmer suspended.
Not living up to the standard.
You run through them. I've been talking too much already.
Miles Farmer suspended for not living up to the standard. He is currently not on the 120-man roster. Brody Tagaloa is back home in California after being in a single-car crash. It sounds like he's okay, but he's just going to have to work through some things, and he will be out for the year, though. Matt Rhule did note that he's got a bright future, though, so they're hoping that he comes back to the team. The one that kind of, I don't know if it caught the most attention, but it was a little surprising. Josh Fleeks.
Yeah, that threw me off a little bit
Josh
too.
Fleeks, not only him being suspended right now, but the reason why he's suspended is Matt Rhule said that he showed up overweight in camp, and that's why he's suspended, because he sent him home to work on his body. And that's a quote. And so that it's interesting to hear that kind of candor from a coach, but also you just right off top, it had to be very disappointing for Rhule, because Rhule, that's a guy in Josh Fleeks that he brought here that had worked with him before. He's just as old as Garrett McGuire, so he'd been a leader in that room. So that was an interesting one that caught my attention.
That's exactly what I was thinking. You don't expect that from a veteran guy who's been around so long. Marcus Washington,
has a broken bone. Had a broken bone in his hand, but he said his right hand. But the cast will be off on Monday. They're hoping that he then will be in a splint and be back at practice on Tuesday. But he was out there today, kind of doing the conditioning type things. But they're hoping to have him back next week in camp.
And then I think the last one was Jacob Hood, offensive lineman, who has been dealing with quote unquote chronic ankle stuff, is how Rhule described it. So he's more in rehab mode. Interesting, he mentioned Marquise Buford and Jason Machachok, who are two guys who were sort of going through that a rehab process and are not living in the dorms for fall camp right now. Buford obviously is still recovering, rehabbing from that knee injury they suffered against Wisconsin in Week 11. And they're slowly bringing him along. So last year's two starting deep safeties, Farmer and Buford, are not practicing during fall camp, and those two were two of the top 4 snap getters on the defense last year, so that's interesting. Machachok, he didn't have a specified injury.
No, he didn't.
He kind of just ran through that one.
Yeah, that one kind of, there was so much to get to early
exactly.
in the, and then we mentioned it briefly, but he had a statement about Bob Wager and kind of appreciating his time at Nebraska, and said that he was a stand-up guy about the incident that happened with him in his resignation, and they were very thankful for Josh Martin being on the staff and having the experience to be able to step right in as well.
And Josh Martin was elevated from an analyst role to full-time assistant as the tight ends coach, and Matt Rhule said that they have a plan to replace Josh Martin, that role, but sort of hurry up and wait mode, I think is what he said, as they chug along there. But a lot of other interesting things that Rhule touched on and the players touched on. Dorm life is obviously one of the big topics around here, because this is the first real time we've gotten to ask a bunch of the players and Rhule more about the dorm life living. He said about 160 players and coaches, staff members are all
a couple trainers as well. I want to note that Rhule did say that, because everyone was asked basically if they had a roommate and who their roommate was. Rhule was asked. He said that he does not have a roommate. Nobody wanted to room with him, is what he said, which is probably true. You probably don't want to room with the boss.
Would you want to live with the RA?
No, and he said that he's in the RA suite on the corner, so his is a little interesting deal there. Ty Robinson joked that the bed is a little small. I mean, when you're 6'5", 300 pounds, that's probably going to be the case. But I think it's going to be good for the team overall with the bonding, because Matt Rhule did mention how it was nice to just kind of wake up this morning and be able to walk to the stadium, but also wake up and everybody's around, right? I think that camaraderie, I feel like there's no way that the team can't be closer after this experience for a couple of weeks.
Exactly, and I mean, it's funny, I was just yesterday thinking about, all right, they're living in the dorms, because they started releasing the videos on the Husker Twitter account, all right, those beds look pretty small, and there's confirmed twin-size beds. I'm like, for the bigger guys, the longer guys on the team, I wonder how those are handling. And Turner Corcoran and Ty Robinson both said, yeah, not a fan of the mattress size.
They said the mattress itself was comfy. Yeah, they did say that. It's just not long enough. Ty said his feet dangled off the bed.
Yeah, and they're in the Selleck quadrangle. Is that how you pronounce it?
I always just say the Selleck quad, so I've never said the full thing. Yeah.
They're cooped up in those dorms, which another positive means players and coaches won't be walking by as we do this video in the background as we start talking about them and assessing their game and analyzing what we saw at things like open practice today, this morning, which, again, 20, 25 minutes of an open session, that's mostly for a video op and and photo op, so you don't get a ton of information from them, but they're still valuable. I mean, you still get some valuable things that you see, but obviously the number one thing that stood out was probably the split sessions.
Yeah, it sucks that we didn't really get to see that. That would have been great if we had seen the split freshman session or that younger player session. I would have actually preferred that. We would have had a lot more takeaways. But having that happen and running was really interesting, and Rhule really elaborated about that during his time. But then also if we're thinking about guys that kind of stood out because we didn't see a ton, just seeing Xavier Betts out there and what he's looked like and the work that he's put in this offseason, he looks great. And all reports behind the scenes have been he's done everything and more that's been asked of him. So I'm excited to see if he can have a big year because he's got a ton of potential.
Yeah, and I saw the linebackers, a little bit of the running backs at the end where MJ Sherman and Chief Borders, and they're expected to fill multiple roles as inside backers, outside backers, and playing more toward the line, maybe as a hand in the dirt guy like MJ Sherman, or maybe stand up like I would expect Borders to play more of if he's down near the line. Those two I looked over briefly, and they were both lined up next to each other as inside linebackers during drills. So that was actually that was interesting note to take away. But most of the time I was spent at an offensive line, a defensive line around those guys. And I mean, Ty Robinson, he's back.
Looks the part.
Yeah, he looks back. He's back, and he's looking sharp. Considering that he missed all spring ball with after off-season shoulder surgery, he was one of the 4 players that met after the practice with the media today. He talked a little bit about that, which you'll be able to read the full story that Steve Marek, our Inside Nebraska staff writer, is cooking up with sort of what Robinson's role is, how he's recovered from that. In addition, Nick Henrich, another of the players who met the media afterward to talk about his recovery. I think that was all I had, other than just Cam Lenhart was another who Robinson said stood out during practice. I was over there watching. He's Prince Will Umanyalan is still looking good. He's the long springer type, and Cam, I think, is like that athletic, still big-bodied, but still adding strength and muscle to his frame from an interior role. But
Blaze Gunnarsson was another guy that had noticed being back out there. He was looking the part, like he definitely does. And I think that his weight got updated. I know people were looking for that information all off season, and that his weight was up on the official roster, and he definitely looks like it. He's a guy too that can continue to add depth to this defensive line, as we talk about that being one of the areas of concern, especially as Nebraska heads into the season and starts off in Big Ten play against a team like Minnesota, who we know is going to run the ball. That defensive line depth will come more into focus as we get going here.
Yeah, last thing from me is I told Steve this. I didn't tell you, I don't think. When I was over with Billy Kemp, I asked him who out of the defensive backs, who's been guarding you the best, who's been doing the best job in coverage. And for a second, he looked like he was thinking, racking his brain. He was going to mention a specific player or two, and then just quickly shout out to all the DBs.
Oh, nice.
It's like, all right, well, I tried.
You almost got one.
He goes, yeah, you tried. So no official word on who's locking down Billy Kemp. Maybe nobody's locking him down, which would be a good sign for Jeff Sims in this passing offense. But unless you have anything else to add, Greg, we'll be back here tomorrow. No open practice tomorrow, but meeting with some more coaches and players as we continue to roll along here at the start of Nebraska's fall camp. So for Greg Smith, I'm Zack Carpenter, and we'll catch you guys again next time.